Hey guys, welcome back to Weld.com. So we've had a lot of requests. It's a highly requested topic. We've had a lot of DMs, emails, comments in our comment section, just overwhelming responses. We put out a video a couple weeks ago. We showed a welding symbol and people said, hey, can you do more videos on welding symbols? So we're going to start incorporating those into every lesson, but I think it'd be a good idea to make a full video about welding symbols. So because of the amount of information, we're going to have to break it up into a little series. So let's talk about exactly what a welding symbol is. Okay, it's basically a symbol that you're going to find on your blueprints or shop drawings that's going to tell you how to make a specific weld in a specific spot. What size it should be, how long it should be, depth, joint preparation, all kinds of stuff. So two things I highly recommend you guys go out and throw in your library is the AWS A2.4 Standard Welding Terms and Definitions. And then the other one is the A2.4 Standard Symbols for Welding, Brazing, and Nondestructive Examination. So these are two books. I mean, they're just worth their weight in gold. Very good information in both of these books. Reference them from time to time out on the job site, or if I have to do stuff in the office, I reference this information all the time. So it's more than paid for itself. Go ahead and pick them up. Another great resource you guys can get is the cameraman will put a link in the description. There's like a cheat sheet or a quick study guide. I don't have mine with me, but you can pick those up. They're relatively cheap. Get them online. And it's just like a quick little card that you can kind of refer back to for all the information we're going to discuss today and the additional episodes. So let's go ahead and we're going to get into it. We're going to first break down exactly what a welding symbol is and how to read them. Okay, welding symbols are nothing more than modern day hieroglyphics. Okay, it's a picture that's going to give us a bunch of information about what we have to weld, how we're going to weld it. Sometimes the process is listed in there. The size of the weld is going to be listed. Depth of fusion, joint preparation, all kinds of good information, right? So the first thing we want to talk about is this horizontal line. This is called a reference line. This is where all your information is going to stem from. Okay, and then we have what's called the arrow line. That's going to point directly to the part that you're supposed to be working on, or you're going to make wherever you're going to make that weld. And it doesn't matter which side that line points to. Okay, you can point left, right, but regardless, you're always going to read the welding symbols from left to right. So if I have the information here, it's always going to go from left to right on both of these. Now sometimes we have a tail, and the tail is used to give us additional information, additional things that aren't found on the welding symbol. They don't have a weld symbol for it or a supplementary symbol for it, such as process or specific preparation, or when we get into talking about back welds and backing welds, because it's pretty much the same symbol, they're going to go ahead and list it in that tail, the information that they don't actually have a symbol for. Okay, so now that we have this right here, let's talk about the sides. Okay, always, this is going to be always the arrow side, and this up here is always going to be other side. Okay, so it doesn't matter which way the arrow is pointing. Always the top is always going to be other side, and the bottom is always going to be arrow side. So this is called a welding symbol. These right here are weld symbols. Okay, and these are my groove weld symbols, and these are additional symbols right here. So I have fillet, plug, slot, stud, spotter, projection, seam, back or backing, surface, and edge. Okay, so these are all the grooves that can be made, and these are all the additional welds that can be made. So let's go ahead and we'll practice. We'll just go through a basic fillet weld, and then I'll show you where arrow side and other side kind of originate, and then how to measure these out as far as length, so you can take the information conveyed on the welding symbol and put it into your work. So remember, this whole setup here is the welding symbol, and these right here are the weld symbols. Okay, and that's specified in those two documents that I was telling you about. Okay, so here's 5 different types of joint configurations. We're going to go ahead and kind of walk you through the process of arrow side, other side, because it can get pretty confusing really quick. Always remember that the information on the bottom is going to apply to arrow side. Information that's going to go on the other side is always going to be on the top. So other, and this is arrow. Okay, so this right here would be the arrow side, and this one is the other side. Okay, get on to joint number 2, arrow side, other side. Same thing, common T-joint, right? Have the arrows pointing down here. So we have arrow side, other side. Again, same thing. And again here, arrow side, other side. Okay, so let's go ahead and we'll walk through, let's talk about different welding symbols. So this right here would be a butt joint. Okay, the two pieces are butted together. Doesn't look like there's any preparation here, but let's just walk through a simple setup. That's a typical single V joint configuration. Now, arrow is pointing to, this weld is going to occur on the arrow side. Okay, so that means my joint preparation is going to take place right here. Okay, so that's when you would see that type of information. So now let's get into this side right here. Let's do a groove weld on one side and a fillet on the other. Okay, so this is a single bevel V groove on the arrow side, and the symbol for a fillet weld on the top. Okay, so the fillet weld is going to go on the other side, and the single bevel V is going to go on the arrow side. So this is what that weld would look like. Okay, so now I have a groove weld over here and a fillet weld on this side. Down here, what if I wanted a fillet weld on both sides? Just like that. That's going to tell me that I need one fillet weld here on the arrow side, one fillet weld on the other side. And we'll get into dimensioning these here in a minute. Same thing with this lap joint over here. We have arrow side, other side. Let's go ahead, we'll just put one fillet weld in on the other side. So you guessed it, it's going to go on the top because the top of the reference line is our other side. And then we'll put that fillet weld in here. Now this piece right here is kind of interesting. This is an edge joint, so we're just going to weld right along top of the edge. And that's what this symbol looks like right here. Okay? So we're just going to, we'll put a weld right up in this area. So as you can kind of already tell, the symbol kind of, signifies or represents and looks like what we're trying to achieve. So right here I have a double or a single V. It's going to go right in here. Okay, and it looks like that single V. Down here I have a fillet weld. Fillet weld typically looks, when it's done correctly, very similar to a triangle. Okay, and then my single bevel over here is just one single bevel. Remember, I have a straight vertical leg. The vertical leg's always going to go on the left-hand side of the weld symbol. So any weld symbols where you have a vertical line, it's always going to go to the left. Okay, so here's my flat piece, and this is the part that gets the preparation. Okay, same thing, fillet weld, just two triangles. And that's what it looks like here, just two triangles. Same thing up here, a triangle, and now the edge joint, just two pieces butted together. So it looks like a butt joint with the two vertical lines. Okay, let's go ahead, I'll draw another sketch out here and we'll start talking about dimensioning. Okay, so let's just do a standard T-joint. Everybody's familiar with a T-joint, especially you guys in school, you're probably welding the heck out of them things right now. Okay, so right here is just a standard T-joint. Let's go ahead and draw a weld symbol for it. We'll talk about what it means. Okay, what size is the fillet weld going to go on? That's right, other side. So it's going to go over on this side. But how do we know how big to put this? So let's say we have 3/8 material and they're going to call out for a 3/8 fillet weld. The size of your fillet weld is always going to go on the left-hand side. So remember earlier when I said we always read from left to right? It's going to be the same thing. Other side, 3/8 fillet weld. Okay? So both of these symbols are telling me the same thing, even though one's drawn with the arrow to the left, one's drawn with the arrow to the right. So what would that look like? Just like this. And that would tell me the dimension from right here at the root to the top or the toe of that fillet weld should be 3/8 of an inch. Now how long should I make this? Okay, that's another thing we have to think about. How long is this weld going to be? Well, if there's no information to the right-hand side, that means I'm going to weld that joint out the full seam. Okay, so let's draw an overhead view. Okay, now this view, this is the bird's eye view, looking top down. We're looking at this piece of material. Okay, so this right here symbolizes this member turned the opposite way. And this is going to be the vertical plate for the T-joint. So if I flip this up on end and spun it back that way, this is going to be the bottom plate laying flat, and this is our vertical plate laying up. Let's say I needed, this was a 10-inch piece, and I needed to put a 10-inch fillet weld in there. How would I do that? The length is always going to be to the right of that fillet weld symbol. So the size of the weld and the length of the weld. Okay, let's say this is a 10-inch piece, but I only wanted to weld up, let's say 8 inches of it. That symbol would be right there. Okay? So we have a 3/8 fillet weld, 8 inches long, over the span of a 10-inch piece. All right, so you notice when I drew this, I put the 8-inch weld in the center. So let me show you exactly what that would look like. So right here we would have some dimensioning lines. So it'd be a 1-inch difference on either side. And in the middle here is where I'm going to have my weld symbol. Okay, we would put that on, this is welds occurring on the other side. So we'll put that fillet weld there. Remember, it's 3/8 of an inch fillet weld. We're going to say 8 inches. Okay, so that way you would know that this weld is actually going to sit on the center. So we have an 8-inch weld, we have 10 inches overall. The difference between that is 2 inches, 1 inch on either side. So you're going to step in 1 inch, make your 8-inch weld, and then stop. Make sure you fill into the entire cross section of that weld, because that is where the CWI is going to come and inspect your work. That's where he's going to measure too. He's going to measure at your crater. Your crater needs to be 3/8 of an inch, because if it's anything less, right, he has to go by the weakest link in the chain. So if you have, let's say, a 3/16 weld, because that crater is not completely filled in, he's going to mark this whole thing as a 3/16 weld, and it's going to be undersized. So you need to make sure that you write that to the complete size that it's supposed to be. All right, let's try something a little bit more complicated. All right, let's try something a little bit more difficult. So here I have 3 pieces. We're going to put 4 different size fillet welds on here. So on one side I'm going to have a 3/8, the other side I'm going to have a 5/16. And then over here we're going to have 1/4 inch and 3/16. So exactly where would these welds go? Which weld size would go where? I'm going to go ahead and give you a second to figure that out. All right, now we're back. So 3/8 on the other side. Other side in this case isn't going to be over here. It's going to be here, because remember, I'm pointing at this joint. I'm not going to cross this member here. I'm going to cross over on this side. Okay? So up here I'm going to have a 3/8 fillet weld. And on this bottom one here, we're going to have 5/16. Now what about over here? 3/16 to the arrow side, and then 1/4 inch to the other side. Okay, so remember, other side, because my arrow's pointing right here, I'm going to have other side, arrow side for my 5/16. Now over here, arrow side is going to be 3/16, while the other side is 1/4 of an inch. Let's go ahead and move on to intermittent fillet welds. All right, so let's talk about intermittent fillet welds. All right, so let's look at a T-joint in the overhead view, or plan view as it's called, as I'm looking down on it. Okay, and I want to make a intermittent fillet weld. Okay, so I'm going to put it on the arrow side, right? And let's make a 1/4 inch weld. We're going to space these out 2 on 6. Okay, now when we talk about weld spacing, it's always going to be written like this. So this number right here, the 2, that's going to be the length of our weld. And then the whatever digit is on the right-hand side after the dash, that is going to be the spacing of the welds. Now the spacing of the welds always goes from center to center. It doesn't go from start to start, end to end. It's always center to center. That's how they're going to measure it. Okay, so what exactly does that mean? That means we're going to have 2-inch welds every 6 inches on center. So we'll go ahead and dimension these. 2 inches here, 2 inches here, 2 inches here. But from center to center, we're going to have 6 inches in between. Now this is welded only on one side. So now what if we have intermittent fillet welds on both sides of the material? Once again, we're still in the overhead view, but now the welding symbol is about to change a little bit. Okay, let's go ahead and just for building a little bit more confidence, let's go ahead and do 1/4 inch up on this side, 3/8 on this side. Okay, for some reason the engineer wants different welds in different places. So 3/8 arrow side is going to go down here, and then the 1/4 inch would go on the other side, which is the top. Okay, so same thing, 2-inch weld every 6 inches, but we're going to go on both sides. That's where our welds are going to be placed. And again, 2-inch welds, and they're going to be 6-inch on center. Now again, we want to be careful with this because our crater, we need to make sure that our craters are filled in to the complete cross section so that the welds are 1/4 inch in our crater and 3/8 in the arrow side crater. You want to make sure to fill those completely in. Otherwise, if it's too small, that welded area right there, the inspector that's going to come in and check your work, he's going to have to go off of that weld. So if you put, if you have a full 3/8 weld all the way across here, but in your crater, you're down to 1/4 inch, he's going to mark that down as a 1/4 inch for that entire weld. You're going to have to redo it. You're going to have to add more weld to it, okay? So try to get it right the first time. I always recommend, if you're a welder, learn how to measure your own welds and get the tools to do it. You can pick up a cheap set of fillet weld inspection gauges. I'd go with Gal. You can get those on Amazon. You can get them at your local welding supply store, but get those to make sure you're hitting the appropriate size so that when the inspector comes over and checks it out, you know, you don't have to go back and redo your work. You already know. Now, if he calls it something different than what you assumed it to be, don't argue with him. Just go back and fix it. Okay, so let's get rid of these. We've got one more type of intermittent fillet weld that I want to talk to you guys about. Standard T-joint and the overhead view. We'll mix it up a little bit. Come down here. Remember, we have our arrow line. And we're going to do 2 types of fillet welds. Now see how these fillet welds are offset? That tells me that the welds are going to be offset in the spacing. We'll do 2 on 6 again. And we'll do, let's say, 5/16 welds. Remember, leg size or weld size is going to go on the left. Length and pitch is going to go to the right. If there is no pitch, if that other digit isn't there, that's the size, that's the length of the weld that you're going to be putting in there. Okay, and all your prints should be in one dimensioning factor or the other. So they're either going to be imperial or they're going to be metric, or whatever the case may be. It should be standard throughout the entire set of prints. So you shouldn't have everything drawn out in standard form and then all your measurements in metric. Okay, that's not going to happen. It's not standard. It's not how it's supposed to be done. Okay, so let's go ahead and draw this out. Okay, again, these are going to be 2-inch welds, and it's going to be every 6 inches. Okay, so now on the back side, we're going to be opposite. Okay, so all the welds are still 2 inches, and then we're going to have 6-inch centers. Same thing here. We're going to have 6 inches in between our 2 welds. So remember, intermittent fillet welds, they're going to be one right over top of the other. Okay, and that tells me that they're going to go one on either side. Okay, and then we have the intermittent, or I'm sorry, the staggered intermittent. The symbols are going to be offset. So anytime those symbols are offset, that's going to tell me that the welds are also going to be offset. One on top of the other, they're just going to be equal. They're going to be on opposite sides. Okay, so that pretty much covers all your the different instances where you would run into intermittent fillet welds. All right, homework time. If you guys want a free slap for your hard hat or your welding hood, go ahead and take a picture of the last fillet weld that you guys did. Go ahead and dimension it out correctly and put it up on Instagram using hashtag Weld.com symbols, or put it up in the Facebook page. We'll go ahead, if you're correct, we're going to go ahead and we're going to mail you out a sticker. So right now I have to go eat crow. In other words, Man Cub won the hurricane challenge, so now I got to spring for lunch. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to head out to lunch. I'm going to get him his chocolate shake he's been whining about. And then stay tuned for part 2 where we talk about groove welds. Okay, make sure you hit that subscription button and that notification bell. That way you're notified when we release our next episode. Until next time, make every weld better than your last.
Here at Smash Brothers, me and Jason. Jason thought I was going to lose a bet. It's like taking candy from a baby. I'm here, easy money.
All right, let's go. Man of my word, I owe this man some food. So we're going to go in here and get our grub on.
I'm going to do 2 bacon smash with pretzels, with a pretzel bun. One I'm going to get drink, a smash fries, and a Diet Coke with one. It's going to be it's salted caramel shake. I'm going to do a chocolate shake with no whipped cream. I'm gonna do a truffle mushroom Swiss with smashed fries. This is best moment right here.
I lost the bet.
I don't have to pay for it.
Lost the bet.
I lost the bet.
Go right here.
Oh yeah. Ooh, buddy. Man, that looks so good. Oh yeah.
Hope you're enjoying that burger there, Mike.
I
The
am.
first and last time you ever beat me.
Right,
Double nothing
sir.
on the next one.
All right. Gotcha.
All right.